Hilchos Erchin Vacharamin, Perek Sheni, the laws of valuation vows and dedication vows, chapter 2. So, just to take a look at this slide for a second to remind ourselves of the basic halachas being discussed here. We're talking about people who take basically pledges to give the value of people to the temple. And there are two types of value vows. One is called Erchin. Erchin means Torah-based worth. There's a table in the Torah. It says, if you're a male, if you're a female, how old you are. If you say, I give your worth to the temple, we check out how old you are. And based on how old you are, that's how much you give. Which parsha? It's Bechukoisai, the last parsha of the book of Vayikra. But then, together with Erchin, we have what's called Damim. Damim means market-based worth. You say, I want to give your worth, not your erech, your monetary worth, to the temple. So what we do is we take you to the slave market and we see how much you would fetch on the market. And that's how you determine market-based worth. Now today we're going to have more details, let's say, specific cases where you would say not just the straightforward words, but because we're Jewish, we have to come up with all the funny cases of different expressions you could use and what laws would apply to you if you use those expressions. So the Rambam begins, halacha aleph, ha'omer erech yadi. A person says, I want to give the Torah worth of my hand. Oy erech eini, oy ragli, alai. Or I take upon myself to give the Torah value of my eye or of my foot. Oy sha'amar, or you said it about someone else. Erech yadzeh, oy einoi alai. I want to give the Torah value of that guy's hand or that guy's eye. Lo yamar klum. You haven't said anything because Torah only fixes a value for a total person. Torah doesn't fix a value for your hand or your foot or your eye. However, if you chose a limb which is integral to your existence, if a person says, Erech libi oy kvedi alai, I want to give the Torah value of my heart or the Torah value of my liver, oy erech libi shel pleini oy kvedi alai, or the Torah value of that guy's heart or liver, noisen erech kulai. Here you have to give his full Torah value, because he can't live without his heart. Yes, the Torah didn't say this is how much his heart is worth, but if you take away his heart, the person would die. So essentially, it's like saying, I want to give that guy's Torah value. So you check out his age, whatever his Torah value is, that's what you give. V'chein kol eiver, the truth is any limb, she'im yinatal min achai yamus, if it were to be removed from a living person, he would die. Im amar erkoy alai, if a person says the Torah value of that limb is upon me, Neisen erech kulai, he has to give the Torah value of the entirety of that person. Halacha beis, pay attention to this difference in wording. Omar chatzi erki alai. If a person says, half of my Torah value is upon me to give, I'm pledging half of my value. So, since you have a full Torah value, we can say you give half of the value. Neisen chatzi erki. That's your pledge. You give half of the Torah value. So if you're between 20 and 60, your erech is 50 shekel, you give 25 shekel. But if a person says, and this is the core difference here, erech chetzi alai, the value of my half, not half of my value, the value of half my body is upon me, then noisen erech kulei. Now you have to give the entirety of the value. Because the value of my half is like saying, how much is half my body worth? If you take away half your body, it's impossible to remove half of a person's body and he'll live. So it's like saying I'm giving the value of my fullness. Half of my value is different than the value of my half. Now, these two halachas are only if you use the word erech, which erech is the Torah-based value. But if a person says, Dmei yadi alai, I take upon myself to give the market-based worth of my hand to the temple, or Dmei yad pleini alai, or the market-based worth of that guy's hand to the temple. So, what do you do now? You could establish how much a person's hand is worth on the market. Shaminoisai, take him again to the market, and you evaluate him. Kama hu shave biyad, v'kama hu shave below yad. How much would a person be worth with a hand? How much would the same person be worth without a hand? And the difference is how much his hand is worth. V'noisen lahekdesh, you give that amount of money to the temple treasury. Now, the Rambam immediately clarifies that we do not mean without a hand completely, an amputated hand. A person who's an amputee, his value goes down a lot. And the difference in depreciation will cost you a lot of money. Instead, this is how you actually go about appraising it. Ketzad, how does this appraisal go? Im nimkarhu kula yiyeshav v'chamishim. Let's say on the market, if you'd sell him as a full human being, he'd be worth 50 silver coins.
As a slave?
Yeah, as a slave. It's not establishing human integral value, of course not. As a slave, you would fetch 50 shekel. If he would be sold, except his hand. What does it mean, except his hand? That the person will retain ownership of his hand, and the buyer will not be able to make use of his hand. So he'll still have the hand. So the difference in value is not so great. Let's say for that he'll be worth 40 silver coins. So it turns out this guy who made the vow to give the worth of the hand, he will have to pay to the temple treasury 10 silver coins. The same thing applies to all similar cases. So that's the difference between Torah-based worth and market-based worth when it comes to regular limbs. But when it comes to integral limbs, the Rambam says the law is the same. However, if somebody says, the market-based worth of my head or of my liver is upon me to give to the temple, or I want to give the market worth of that guy's head or heart or liver, here you have to give the worth of his entirety, because you can't say, what you're going to sell a person as a slave without his head, without his liver. It doesn't make sense. Like that story of the Rebbe used to have an audience with every bar mitzvah boy, and he would ask them questions in halacha. So they say a story that this boy came into the Rebbe's room, and the Rebbe was quizzing him on the laws of tefillin. So the Rebbe said, which hand do you put on the tefillin? So the kid said, you put it on the left hand. So the Rebbe said, what if you don't have a left hand? So the boy knew the answer, you put it on the right hand. At least you have a right hand. So the Rebbe said, huh? Yeah, he was talking about a standard case. So the Rebbe said, what if he has no hands? So the boy said, you put it on the head. So the Rebbe asked him, what if he doesn't have a head? And the kid was stumped. Instead, if you don't have a head, you're not alive. Yeah. So I'm just saying, over here also, you can't say, I'm going to sell a guy in the market without his head. No, if you say his head, that's encompassing his entirety, so you have to give his entire worth. Similarly, somebody who says, Dmei chetzi alai, the market worth of my half is on me. You got to pay the market worth of the entire being, because you can't take away half of a person. But if you say, chatzi damai alai, half of my market-based worth I'm going to give to the temple, then of course, noisin chatzi damav, you can give half of your worth. Figure out your worth and give half of it. Halacha hey. We now move on to other expressions that don't involve the word damim. They don't involve the word market worth. But in halacha, they're going to be considered like somebody who owes damim, somebody who owes market worth. Ha'omer, a person says, mishkali alai. I want to pay my weight to the temple. Or mishkal ploini alai. Or the weight of that guy. I want to pay his weight to the temple. Noisin mishkale. So, figure him out. Put him on a scale and figure out his weight. Im kesef kesef, im zahav zahav, kamesha peresh. You give either silver or gold according to what you said. I want to give this guy's weight in gold, so pile him up on a scale, pile up gold on the scale, and when you reach the amount, that's what you give. Omar, if a person says, mishkal yadi oiragli olai, I want to give the weight of my hand or the weight of my foot to the holy temple. Rayin. So we check. How much should your hand or your foot weigh proportionally? Yeah, you can't really do it exactly, but you can estimate it proportionally. And you give whatever money you promised. Now you have to know what classifies as the arm or the leg. How big is my hand for the weight? So the Rambam says, halacha has it all established. Ad heichan hi hayad le'inyan zeh, until where is the hand for this matter? So the Rambam points ad ha'atzil, till the elbow. So it's from the bottom of the hand, those ends of the fingers, till the elbow. The haregel, where is the foot until ad ha'arkuba? It's till the knee. In other words, this bottom part will be called the foot. Already once you're up here, you're already calling it the thigh. It's a separate name. Or the leg. According to halacha, the foot will extend for this matter till the knee. Even though, let's say in the Torah, sometimes foot encompasses all the way up here to the waist, but for vows, we always follow the commonly accepted meaning. People say foot, they mean the bottom of the foot. Halacha vav ha'omer kaimasi alai. A person says, I'm going to give my height to the temple. Kesef oizahav, in silver or gold. So, how much is a person's height? Noisin sharvit she'einoi nichpaf meloi kaimasei mimin sheperish. You have to give a scepter, like a thin stick, sturdy though. It can't be flexible or bending from whatever type of metal you promised. I'm going to give my height in gold. You don't have to give your full height and width and breadth. You get a stick that's as tall as you, as long as it's big enough that it's not going to bend over, you're good.
So you do it one on top of the animal, laying.
No, upwards. Amar, if the person says, he uses the Hebrew expression, miloi kaimasi alai, the fill or the extent of my height is upon me. So now, noisin afilu sharvit shenichpaf mimin shapiresh. You can even give a bendable scepter. In other words, it's much thinner. Just it has to be a thin thing that reaches your height, even if it can't stand on its own. Halacha zayin ha'imra mishkali alai. V'lei peidash me'ezamin. A person promises, I'm going to give my weight to the holy temple, and he didn't say which metal. Your height in gold, your weight in gold, your weight in silver. What are you giving? So the Rambam says it depends on his financial capacity. If he's very rich and it's clear that he intends for a great gift, he should give his weight in gold. Same thing applies if a person says, I'm going to give my weight, the weight of my hand or the weight of my foot, or I'm going to give my height to the temple, and he didn't express which type of metal he promises. If he's rich and it seems like he wants to give a bigger gift, you give gold. If he isn't so extensively wealthy, you check what's the commonly accepted practice. What's usually converted into weight. And you give the weight of that object, afilu peiros, even if it's fruit. Your weight in apples. You didn't say what you're going to give, so you give apples according to your weight. You can give a scepter. That's the extent of your height, even made out of wood, if you didn't say which material. Always we evaluate him according to his financial capacity and according to his mindset. What did he have in mind to give? If a person says, I'm going to give my standing to the temple, yeshivasi alai, my sitting, the place of my sitting, my width, my thickness, my circumference. All these expressions, kol elu safik. We're all in doubt about how much you have to give. And here's the rule. We're going to have this a couple of times now. A person should give from his money, ad sheyoymar loy kach niskavanti. You keep on giving till you say, you know what, no, that I didn't mean. Since we don't know how much to give, just keep giving till you say, you know what, no, it definitely wasn't more than that. If such a person dies, however, yitnu hayershim pachus shebelashaynis. His heirs only have to give the least amount that's included in that expression. They don't have to give until they say it's enough. They give the least because they didn't make the vow. It was their father that made the vow. Halacha tesa eimer, if a person says, I'm going to give a silver coin to the temple. There are many silver coins. What do you give? La yivches mi dinar kesef. No less than a silver dinar. That's the minimum coin intended here. Matbeya nechayshas, a person gives, or he promises to give a copper coin. La yivches mi ma kesef. He shouldn't give less than the equivalent of a ma'ah of silver. So in copper you give the amount that equates to a silver ma'ah. Harei alai barzel, if a person says, I'm going to give iron to the holy temple. So
There were iron?
Iron. So there was no iron in the Bet HaMikdash except for one place. Look over here. This is a picture of the temple structure. On the top of the actual building, there was what's called the Kalya Oirev. Kalya Oirev is basically like you see today, little protruding, what do you call them? Like needles kind of thing, that stop birds from resting on those places. So in the Beis HaMikdash, they also had that, so that ravens, birds shouldn't rest on the roof. So the Rambam says, Lo yivches me'ama al amma, he should give a cubit by a cubit, a blade of iron, lekala oirev shahaya lamayla begaga hechal, for the blades that would protect against the birds on top of the roof of the holy temple, as will be explained in its place. Halacha yud ha'omer, if a person says, Harei alai kesef ay zahav v'lei hizker matbeya, I'm going to give silver or gold. He didn't say a coin. How much should you give? Yavi lashen shel kesef, ay shel zahav, bring a slab of silver or gold. It's called a tongue because they used to be shaped like tongues. Yia mishkala, and it should weigh so much, ad sheyomer le'lekach niskavanti, until he says, you know what, I didn't mean that much. In other words, keep piling on the silver, piling on, until you say, that's it, I didn't mean this much. Or if you said the weight, b'shachach kama pedash, and you forgot. How much weight did I say? Yavi, keep bringing more. Ad sheyomer le'lekach niskavanti, you bring till you say, you know what, I didn't mean that much. Halacha yud aleph, echad ha'omer, damay olai, oidmei pleini olai, all of these last halachas, the same laws apply whether a person says, I'm going to give my market-based worth, or that guy's market-based worth, I'm going to bring 100 silver coins, 50 silver coins, silver, gold. When you use these expressions, they're all called those who are obligated to give market-based worth to the temple. In other words, in the first category of erech, only goes that word. Only if you said, I'm going to give this guy's erech or my erech, then you're called chayave erchin, obligated to give Torah-based value. Otherwise, you're called, any pledge you make is called chayave damin. Both people who gave market-based value and people who gave Torah-based value, the money always went to what's called bedek habayis, the upkeep of the holy temple, the funds for the upkeep of the temple treasury. Yud Beis, shtei lishkos hayu b'mikdash. In the holy temple, there were two special rooms. Achas lishkas chashayim. One was called the chamber of the secret givers. The achas lishkas hakelim, and one was called the chamber of the vessels. Lishkas chashayim, the chamber of the secret givers, was like this: Yirei chet noisnen l'seichan b'chashai. People who, God-fearing people, feared sin. They would put money in there secretly. Va'aniyim b'nei toivim misparnesim b'mena b'chashai. And poor people who are of good genealogy just couldn't make ends meet, they would come there and get parnasa secretly. So it was like almost the highest level of tzedakah, where you don't know who you're giving to, and the guy doesn't know who he's getting from. And this was a special room in the holy temple. Lishkas hakelim, the chamber of the utensils, of the vessels, was like this. It was a room full of pashut, metal vessels. Kol mi she'isnadiv kli zerker l'seicha. People didn't always have money to give to the temples. They would give their old vessels, the old pots and pans, and you would throw it in there. Once in 30 days, the temple treasurers would open it. Any utensil which the temple treasury, the upkeep maintenance fund, could use, they would leave. And the rest they would sell. And the money would go, the proceeds would go to the maintenance fund in the temple. There was basically two funds in the Holy Temple. The one that we're talking about till now, bedek habayis, the upkeep, and there was what's called kodshei mizbeach, the funds for the sacrifices. The funds for the sacrifices typically came from once a year the Jews would give a half shekel coin, the machasita shekel, and that would be kept in a special chamber. So what if the Kohanim needed money for the sacrifices and there wasn't enough in the temple treasury? In halacha, the lower holiness serves the higher holiness. So the higher holiness is the sacrifices. Lower holiness is temple maintenance. So if there's not enough in the funds for the sacrifices, they can take money from the maintenance fund. But if they needed money for the maintenance, and they didn't find in the chamber of the upkeep treasury enough money to suffice for them, you cannot take what you need from the sacrifice fund, because you can't take from a higher holiness to a lower one. What do you got to do? You got to fundraise, make more money for the temple treasury.